Hello and welcome back to the channel. It feels like just yesterday we did the round 8 review of Super Rugby. Wait, hang on a second. It was just yesterday we did the review. We are a little bit behind. We are catching up from a horrible last few days, but we're back in action and we're coming hard and fast with round 9 of Super Rugby, where we're going to have a look at the 8 matches in store, who I think's going to win, what I think's going to happen, and of course my pick for that match. Every single 8 matches coming your way. So 8 matches, that means we have 2 teams having a bye, and that is the Blues and the Bulls, who will be out of action. So let's get stuck in, go through our matches, have a quick look at them, and get my results coming through and see how well my picks go. So it is to Dunedin and Forsyth Bar Stadium where we kick round 9 off. It is Anzac weekend as well. For those of you in New Zealand and Australia, you'll know exactly what that was. It is an old war memorial kind of day, so those of you from South Africa and Argentina, Japan, or everywhere around the world will not know what Anzac Day is. You might find out a little bit in this weekend's Super Rugby matches. I'm sure there will be some conversations about what Anzac Day is all about, but that means a day off on Monday, so woohoo! A day off work is always good to me. So our first match of the weekend is on Friday night. It is the Highlanders up against the Sharks, and this is a return from the bye for the Highlanders. And of course now they've had 2 weeks to sit and stew on that loss to the Reds a couple of weeks ago in round number 7. So they're back from the bye, they've got Ben Smith back, and they're up against the Sharks, a team who really hasn't shown too much in the way of their attacking prowess this year at all. We've seen last week for them, they were really didn't have much in the tank at all and struggled to really put anything away against the Blues. I think they're going to really struggle here against the Highlanders, who are going to be, let's be fair, pissed off and up for a big backlash from that result a couple of weeks ago. And the Sharks, well, they have to change their game tactics here. They've got to change their game plan. They cannot expect to keep playing the same way and get different results. That's not how it works. If the game's not going your way, you change the game yourself. You don't wait for things to change for you, and that's what the Sharks really need to do. I think the Highlanders are a much tougher and scarier prospect than the Blues were, which means only hard things ahead for the Sharks if they don't change the way they really enforce their attack. Their defense is good, but they can't sit back on their defense. They need to attack. They've got weapons throughout their team. Like we mentioned about the review of round 8, we've seen Willie LaRue does a lot himself, but often lacks the support and attack to really put anything forward for his Sharks side. As a result of that, I've got the Highlanders coming out in a barnstorming win. I really hope to see the Highlanders start well as well, because we've seen them in the last few matches very slow out of the blocks, and it cost them ultimately against the Reds. So I've got the Highlanders winning this one 37-20, back at home, back from the bye, and really chomping at the bit to get a result in front of their home crowds. 37-20 is my score prediction. Alrighty, so we move away from Dunedin and we make our way over to Melbourne, where it's Amy Park, the stadium that continuously gets destroyed. And again, we're going to fear what's going to happen to the grass here out at Amy Park. It's the Rebels at home to the Cheetahs, and we have the Cheetahs coming here to Amy Park on the back of a 92-point match last weekend. That's right, they scored 92 points by themselves and destroyed the Sunwolves. Now they're coming to face the Rebels, a team that got dumped quite literally by the Hurricanes last weekend as well. So 2 very different contrasting teams here. We've got the Cheetahs in their aeroplane flight over here, which would have been like party happy central. They would have been absolutely buzzing on their way over to Melbourne, and up against them is of course the Rebels at home, who have been sitting at home really sad, and I can imagine that they'll be absolutely angry about how that match against the Hurricanes went. So now they've got to step it up against a team that put 92 points on the board last weekend. Now, the Rebels, they've got to show that fight. They've got to bounce back. And the question is, will we see it from them, or will we see them just lie down and take another beating from the Cheetahs? The Cheetahs are a good side. They've not had the best of seasons, a bit up and down against some better sides, but I think they're much too good for the Rebels here. And on the road, even in Australia, we know South African teams don't like the road travel too much, but the Cheetahs, I think, are one of the better sides, along with the Lions, the Stormers as well, the Bulls. So many good South African sides, it's almost ugly to watch for the other teams. I've got a big one here for the Cheetahs over the Rebels, 34-15, comprehensive all the way to the bank. Cash that one in for the Cheetahs to get the win. Okay, now our third match of the weekend is an absolute peach. Not is it a matchup between two of the top teams in the competition, it is a matchup between two of the new sides in the competition. Now, either way, I would hope we're going to get a win for one of these two teams, and it's going to be a bit embarrassing when two of their three wins have come against each other. These new sides I'm talking about here. It is the Sunwolves up against the Jaguares in Tokyo. So advantage at home goes to the Sunwolves, but this is a must-win for both of these sides. And one of these two teams are going to look very, very down in the dumps after this weekend's result. I think the Jaguares, for me, have to be huge favourites for this matchup. They've got to be. They have to get the job done here. But the Sunwolves, you cannot count them out. They've shown throughout this tournament they have the ability to score tries from anywhere on the field. They are a real attacking threat. Even more so than the Sharks that we see on Friday nights. I think the Sunwolves really have that ability to pinch something out of nowhere, as do the Jaguares, however. And I think the thing that the Jaguares need to do here is play smart. Go to basics. Do the simple things well and play to win. Don't do the hanky-panky, throw it over the back of your head, dodgy stuff that will play to the favour of the Sunwolves. Play hard, play in the forwards. This is what the Jaguares need to do. And the Sunwolves, if they're going to get anything from this, they need to do the unbelievable. They need to score tries. Tries, like we know they can do. It's going to be an absolute cracking matchup between these two sides. Also being in Tokyo is a massive advantage to the Sunwolves, and it's going to be a tough one to pick, really. I think it's going to be a close game, an exciting game. I'm actually quite looking forward to it. I have the Jaguares coming in 29-23 over the Sunwolves. Probably a little too much heart going into that one. I know the Sunwolves definitely capable of getting this victory, but do we want to see the Jaguares lose? Who's going to lose? Either way, it's a big loss for whoever loses this matchup. Following that one on Saturday afternoon/evening, we make our way down to Westpac Stadium in Wellington, where this could be one of quite a few possible games of the weekend. It is the Hurricanes up against the Chiefs. This is massive. This is a huge matchup between these two sides. A bye for the Chiefs last weekend as well. They'll be refreshed, and boy, did they need it as well for all the injuries and all that big pressure toll taking its combined toll on the side. Players missing out from injury for quite some time. Now they've had some time to consolidate, bring guys back in, have a bit of a rest, get rid of those niggles, and now they're back in action. As for the Hurricanes, of course, a big confidence win for the Hurricanes last weekend against the Rebels, which was massive for them to go on the road and take that victory in Australia. For the Chiefs, I think that bye come at a perfect time. Their amazing form we'd seen from them in the lead up to the bye was slowly starting to fade away, and I think they needed that recovering stage of a couple of extra days in the middle with no matches there, and they can hopefully, for their sake, regather that form that made them one of the most exciting and dangerous sides in Super Rugby. For the Hurricanes, there's two men massively that will affect this game for the Wellington side, and that is Beauden Barrett and the two Savia brothers, Julian and Artie. Those three players have been really key for the Hurricanes. I've even been impressed with the form of Corey Jane in the recent couple of weeks as well, which is really good for the Hurricanes. I think, at the end of the day, we know both of these teams can attack. There's no problem whatsoever there, but it will be defence that wins this one out at the end of the day. I've got the Chiefs coming out on top, 44-30 over the Hurricanes. We cross back over the ditch over to NIB Stadium in Perth, where the Force will be up against the Waratahs, and an interesting matchup here for both of these sides. The Waratahs, of course, their recent form has been rather poor, and they need a big win here against the Force if they're going to revitalise their season, which has really fallen into a big black hole so far after those last few losses that come in their way. So another trip over for the Waratahs here could mean bad things for their season. It could be technically the end of their season if they dig themselves too far down with no real chance of getting back. Now the New Zealand Conference is flying high and scoring points for fun. Now the Aussie teams need to keep up. If anyone else wants to get that wildcard spot, they need to be right up there come the end of the season. The Waratahs need a massive lift from what we've seen against the Brumbies last weekend and matches prior to that as well, if they're going to get back to what we know the Waratahs can do. This is the biggest shot for the Force, however, on the other side of the ledger. This is their biggest opportunity to get a win over one of the biggest sides like the Waratahs. The Force are going to need an 80-minute performance. They're going to need a good, fast start, and they're going to need tight defence because the Waratahs are a team that can cut you to ribbons given half a chance. They have the ability and the talent. There's just something not quite clicking in that Waratahs side. They need to win, the Waratahs. Simply put, I don't think there's any other result that they can even consider. If they lose this one here, it's going to really destroy any fear, any concerns teams have about going to face the Waratahs, and they really would have fallen down the pecking order when it comes to how much teams fear going to play them. I have the Waratahs getting the job done here, although I don't know if it'll be too convincing, but the scoreline will be 22-9, Waratahs winning over the Force. We follow that one up straight to South Africa, where the Stormers are up against the Reds in Newlands. So this is two sides playing on two very, very different levels. Of course, we know, we've spoken about it before, the Reds very much improved. They're going up very nicely as well, getting those improvements week after week after week. The Stormers, however, completely different. They are a team right up there, title contenders. They are the ones in the competitive matches with the other big sides. We've seen it last week against the Lions. That was two title contending sides battling it out for crucial points. It's a tough road trip for the Reds as well, coming up against the Bulls and now up against the Stormers. It is two of the top sides from South Africa, but they're going to have to suck it up here because they need points, and if they're going to recover anything from the season, they need this form to stay nice and high. The Stormers, however, they need to try and not play to the standard of the match. They need to keep their levels high. They need to keep at the top of their game. They can't slip here because they're playing what could be considered a lesser side, and the Reds, they need to keep their game right up there and continue to challenge those top sides in South Africa, like the Lions, like we've seen from them last weekend. I think the Stormers will do it quite easily. However, I think they'll come out with a big win, 30 points to 15 over the Queensland Reds, who have shown good things in their tour, but ultimately no points will come for them of this trip to South Africa. And while we're on the topic of no points, the Kings are the next team up, and they are coming up against the Lions. And wow, what can you say about this one? It's not going to be pretty, is it? It's really not going to be pretty, and I fear that there might be another 90 points in the offering here if the Lions get their game going. We've seen the Kings compete, we've seen them come nicely and challenge some sides, but the Lions are just really right up there. If the tournament was finishing right now, the Lions would be one of my favourites for a top four semi-final kind of finish. The way they're playing is just amazing, and they have to be right up there come the end of the season if they can keep this form together. The Lions are a class above. The Kings need to learn that the Lions were in the same position the Kings are in a couple of years ago. Now, I remember it quite vividly. The Lions, the Cheetahs, the Force, the Rebels, all teams, they were easy beats. You went on your South African tour across to play the Cheetahs and the Lions. You were lucky. You got the two easy beats of the tournament. You went over there and played the Bulls or the Sharks or something, and you drew the short straw. But how things have turned around. The Kings need to keep that in mind. They need to build. They need to know that results, although they are important, they need to build for the future. And if the Kings can see themselves in a position that the Lions are in now in 2 to 3 seasons, it has to be classed as a success. The same goes for Sunwolves and the Jaguares. No team's going to come in here and just blitz it first off the whistle. They need to build. The Lions have shown how it's done, and they're really becoming a top side through their development over seasons where they've been thrashed, and no one talks about that now, do they? They all go on about how good the Lions are and how well they are performing. I've got this one down to be a bit ugly, a bit nasty for the Kings as well. 53-16, the Lions to give them an absolute pantsing at home against the Kings. Right, one match to go, and it is back to Canberra on Sunday evening. This is nice. I like Sunday evening rugby. We've seen it over Easter. Now we're seeing it over Anzac weekend as well. And it is an absolute blitzer as well. The Brumbies at home against the Crusaders. Now the Crusaders looking like one of the top sides in New Zealand over recent weeks. They're up against the Brumbies, who are still sitting there, easily the best Australian side. They did enough against the Waratahs last week to keep that position as number one in Australia. This is a massive clash here. And it's at a perfect time as well, when the Crusaders have finally developed and established a way to go forward. And there's one man who's really at the core to that happening, and that is Ryan Crotty. His straightness when running through the back line doesn't allow defences to slide across and easily cover as the Crusaders were going side to side to side to side. Crotty's straightening runs, they put that defence in two minds and make them straighten up, keep them honest, and allows the outside backs, the likes of Nadolo, McNichol, and as we've seen last weekend, Israel Dag, to really create some space out there, all on the back of the way that Ryan Crotty plays his role. Now, we mentioned Israel Dag already. As much as I don't rate him too highly, he did perform extremely well in the Crusaders match last weekend where they took on the Jaguares, when he played quite well, gave him a couple of tries. Fair play to him. He's looked like a good, better player since coming back from his long injury layoff. As for the Brumbies, they showed that they don't rely on one man, and one man by the name of Pocock. They showed there's some depth within their squad, they have some ability, and they can look elsewhere for that inspiration. I think the likes of Lealiafano and Joe Tamani are going to be very key for how this Brumbies team performed. They were massive last weekend, but they have talent throughout. There's names and Wallaby players all through that Brumbies team. You got Stephen Moore right in the middle of the front row, inspirational leader. They need no more than him. They are a tough side, the Brumbies, and it's really going to be tough for anyone to go there and take points off the Brumbies side. But I'm going to buck the trend. The Crusaders have impressed me in recent weeks, and I'm going to go with them for the win, 27-25 over the Brumbies. It's going to be tough, and it's a big call, because really the Brumbies should win that game, but I just really like the way the Crusaders have improved and gained that extra force, you could say, through the middle of the park with Crotty, his attacking runs, and just how it lifts the rest of the team, and all the players around him seem to get their lines perfectly when he is doing his job right. Alright, so that is me done and dusted. That is our 8 matches for the weekend. Thank you everyone for tuning and watching. Of course, leave your picks below, and if you get better or the best of all the picks, I will give you a special mention in the review video early next week. All going well. Of course, Monday is a holiday over here in New Zealand, so woohoo for that. Hopefully plenty of time to get the review, have a look at, and get that up nice and early after the weekend's action. Thank you everyone for tuning and watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments and thoughts below, and of course your picks, and I'll see you again very soon. Until then, take care.